no biggie. I kind of like it when people ask me questions at the end. So looks like Michael just jumped on. We are going to wait one more minute and we're going to start. And I got some powerful stuff for you guys today. It's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting stuff. This whole bank stuff is next level. So
how was your mastermind?
It was great. It was fun. My brother and his kids ended up meeting us, and I had everybody hang out. We did a lot of, so on my high level mastermind, we do 2 calls every single month, 2 Zoom calls. And we talk about high level, next level stuff, but I meet like 3 times a year with everybody, just to meet up with everybody, do some more in-person training. But I like doing like a relaxed atmosphere, when we go somewhere special. So we were at the Ozarks and, we ended up we were on a boat a lot. We rented a 63-foot boat one day. We rented a 52-foot boat one day, and then we were it was fun. We were on a pontoon one day too. So we were on the water most of the time, boating around, looking at really expensive, really nice houses, and kind of just, teaching and stuff at the same time. So it's pretty cool stuff. So first time in the Ozarks for me, and I really enjoyed it. So plus my brother was there. I don't get to see him very often, so it's pretty cool. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. You guys, there's a bunch of people that evidently couldn't make it today, but will be watching the replay. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. With this small of a group for right now, just if you have a question, just speak up. So what I want to talk about today is how to get your banker to say yes. Now, just to preface the whole conversation, I've done literally over 2,000 bank loans. I was not nobody in my family is a banker. I didn't have any specialized knowledge in terms of banking. I just ask a lot of questions. And in 2005, I did my very first deal, and then got my very first mortgage on my first property I ever did. And so, I started learning a lot. We started doing more and more deals. I did 12 deals my very first year in real estate in 2005. 2006, I did 10 deals. It seems so small now. Now we have weeks where we do 10, but, and then in 2007, I did 19 deals. And then 2008 hit and the world of banking changed. And I'm one of those types of people that I don't really just submit to the economy or the process. I dig in and I learn. And I'll never forget the specific place I was at. I remember the exact moment in time. My banker called me and said, "Hey, Matt, these loans that we've been doing for you, we can't do them for you anymore. It's gone. Like the Fed stepped in, they changed the regulations. And now, everything is super, super strict and we can no longer do that loan for you anymore, that type of loan." And so he basically shut me down overnight. I'm dead in the water in terms of buying properties with getting a mortgage. And so I knew I'm just not the type that gives up. I just figured there's just must be something I don't know. And so I assumed everybody else was doing the same thing. But what I found out over the years is I learned stuff that other people just don't know. And so in 2008, when that hit, I remember I used to drive so keep in mind, it's 2020 right now. This is 12 years ago. In 2008, seems like yesterday. I was still driving a beat up Ford Taurus. It was dented on both sides, and I was buying real estate like crazy, but I wasn't spending any money on a vehicle or like fancy clothes. I remember a few of my buddies always made fun of me because I wore Levi jeans and didn't buy like the designer jeans because I put all my money in real estate. So I remember I kept this really thick yellow book, this phone book. Believe it or not, I'm pretty old school, but believe it or not, 12 years ago, everything's online now. And yes, you can go to phone books online, but I wanted a phone book in my front seat. So I kept this really thick phone book in my front seat of my car. And I drove down every time I was in my car, which was always back then. I was always looking at houses. I was always driving, and I had to do 2 things at once. And so when I was in my car, I was on the phone. And so I was calling banks. All of a sudden, I'm shut down. I can't buy any more houses with these mortgages that I was doing. All the banks are going bankrupt. The economy's plummeting. And I had to find a better way. And so I'm calling banks all the time. I literally, no exaggeration, I probably called well over 1,000 different banks in that time frame, or at least made 1,000 phone calls. Sometimes I called the same bank back multiple times and asked for somebody different. And so I learned a lot, and I learned how to borrow money, and I learned what bankers wanted to see, and I learned what bankers wanted to hear. And it wasn't long, it didn't take me long that I was back in the saddle and I was buying houses like crazy again. And over the next 4 years, from that point, from 2008 to late 2008, early 2009 to 2012, 2013, my portfolio grew from, a couple of dozen properties to 450 houses. And I did that by utilizing the stuff I'm going to be teaching you guys today. So I wanted to, again, this training is titled How to Get Your Banker to Say Yes. We're going to be moving fast. There's a lot of great information we got to cover today. If you don't have a pen and paper, and you're old school like me, I do everything on pen and paper. I don't type a lot. Then grab something to take notes with. Keep in mind, you can come back and watch this video. If I miss something, don't stress, watch the video over. You'll probably want to watch the video over again anyway, just because I'm going to be covering a lot of high level stuff here. So how to get your banker to say yes. First of all, I've got a couple pages of notes here that I wrote down as I'm extracting all this stuff out of my brain, and I don't want to miss anything. So one of the first things to remember is when it comes to banks is people think there's this thought out there that all banks want to lend money. Okay. Yeah. And people are like, yeah, of course, Matt, that's why they're banks. That's their business. They're in the business of lending money. But let me clear something up for you. Not every bank is in the business of lending money all the time. And sometimes they're lending money on something that you don't need a loan on. So sometimes they're lending money on something of the opposite of something that you want to do. So for example, if you call a bank and you're trying to get a mortgage on a rental property, and they don't have an appetite for rental properties at that point in time, they're going to tell you no. You're going to be frustrated because you think you're getting turned down, and in reality, it has nothing to do with you. Now, the bank's never going to tell you that. Okay, they're not going to say, well, based on the fact that our bank cash reserves are low right now, we're not lending on rental properties, or hey, based on the fact that we just foreclosed on 200 rental properties from other landlords, we're saying no to you right now. They're never going to do that. Why banks aren't just honest, I have no idea, but they're never going to be honest with you. They're going to say it's something to do with you. And that's just the way that banks are, which is super, super frustrating, but that's the facts. Now, we're going to get into that stuff that I just mentioned when I talk appetite. Very, very important part of this lesson is a bank's appetite. I'm going to get into that in a minute. So, but I'm trying to frame this conversation so that you understand that it's a bank, their appetite changes, their liquidity changes, their board, the lending board changes, and the federal guidelines change. So things are always going to be moving and shaking. If you think you're all set with a bank today and you never have to worry about banks again, you're wrong. Things will change, I guarantee it. And you will have tough conversations down the road. It's happened to me with every single bank that I've ever said, man, this bank is amazing. These are the guys are the greatest thing ever. At some point in time, I'm frustrated with them, and I'm not happy with the way they're doing things. It's just how it works. So just framing that out is banks change their mind. Okay, it has nothing to do with you always. So let me talk about liquidity of a bank. So most people don't understand this part, and I'm gonna keep it as super simple as I possibly can. The banking world can get super complicated, or at least the bankers want you to think it's complicated. But let me just tell you that banks have two things. Okay, they have liquidity, funds in which to lend, and then they have loans they've already made, in which they're earning interest on. Okay, those are the two main functions of a bank: collect on the money that they've already lent on, and have reserves in place to be able to lend more. So you have to find out which position that bank is in. Okay, you have to know, are they, so this is, again, I'm trying to keep this slow, but this is super important stuff here. Does the bank have more liquidity? Are they liquidity heavy, or are they loan heavy? Okay, what I mean is, do they have more funds in liquid reserves than they need, or do they have more loans on the books than they should have, and now their liquid reserves are down? Okay, why is that important? Well, I'll tell you why. The reason that's important is, if you call a bank and say, hey, I need a loan on this rental property, and they say, sure, no problem, give me your financials, we'll run your credit report, we'll see if you qualify. And all of a sudden they call you back and say, well, you didn't qualify. Now, if you could not qualify there, they're not ever going to tell you, no, you know, we're tight on money right now, our liquidity is low, we're not lending. That they're never going to tell you that. It's never going to happen. And the reason why is, they will lose you as a customer forever, because in your mind, every time you think that bank, you're going to think, well, they don't have liquidity, I'm not going to call them anyway. You know, I'll just skip past them. When they know that if they did a big CD special, a certificate of deposit special, they brought a whole bunch of cash in, and now they can lend again. But wait, it's too late. I already told that person we were low on cash, and now they'll never think of us again to you know, for their loan needs. That's why they'll never be honest with you. Okay, it's sad, but that's how it works. So you have to do your part to figure out, are they loan heavy or are they liquidity heavy? And that's how we're going to get into this. That's what your job is, to find out. So always remember that your job is to do the research. Your job is to build the relationship with the banker. But in reality is, you have to ask the right questions if you're going to find this out. They're never going to volunteer the information. They're always going to just turn you down and say you didn't qualify for a loan, just how it is. Okay, so how do you find the banks that want to lend then? Well, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, you guys, because we're going to go into this a little deeper in a later date. But one of the ways to find banks, and I've been teaching this part of banks for a few years here, and it works really well. This just gets you filtered to the banks that are potential that you can borrow from. This doesn't necessarily qualify them as somebody you are going to end up getting loans from. Okay, this just filters out the stuff that the banks that have no chance. So what you're going to do is, you're going to do the very, very simple process here. You're going to go to yellowpages.com or yp.com. You're going to type in your city. There's two sections, two boxes that come up. One is going to ask you, what you're looking for, in this case, a bank or credit union. And the other one is going to say what city. So you're going to type in your city and whatever you want to borrow money, and then the word bank. Now, one thing I mentioned there is, when it comes to having your banker say yes, one thing that banks look at is location. Where are you located? And more specifically, if you are located in, Miami, Florida, and you want to get a loan on a property in Los Angeles, California, from a bank that's located in Miami, Florida, the chances of you getting approved for that loan is almost zero. And the reason why is, that bank doesn't want to have an asset in another city where they're not located. Now, if they have a branch in California or in Los Angeles, right where you want to borrow from, that's different. But if they don't have a local presence in that area, they're not going to likely take on that loan, because if something goes bad, now they don't have anybody they can't send the loan officer down to look at the asset to see what kind of condition it's in. So just remember that typically you're trying to lend where you are located. Okay, now if you're trying to do deals from across the country, you need to focus on banks that have a branch in that location. However, you want to build a local relationship. Okay, you're going to hear me talk a lot about relationships because banking is very relationship heavy. So again, going back, yp.com, there's 2 boxes, type in bank, type in the city, and a whole bunch of pages are going to come up with all these different banks. Now, so you're going to go, who knows how many, depending on where you're at, 20, 30, 40, 50 pages of banks. Now, what I'm going to tell you to do is you're going to go to the very last page and work your way forward. And the reason why you're starting at the end, basically the opposite of what you do on a Google search. When you Google something, you go right to the front page and you find what you need. This is just the opposite. And let me tell you why this is the opposite. For one, most of the biggest banks get the best advertising in phone books or on a phone book website like yp.com. And so, typically, the stuff I'm going to teach you with banks is not going to be done with a large, the big banks like the Wells Fargo and the Banks of America. Not always, but a lot of times, most of the time, 95% of the time, the stuff that you want to accomplish with banks will be done with a small credit union, local credit union, or small community bank. And I say small, this could be somebody with a bank that has a lending capability of $10 million, but most of them are in that $1 to $3 million range. So if you go to the very end of the last page and work your way forward, you're going to go right to the banks that don't spend any money on advertising, which is the smaller banks. Now, what you're going to do is when you get to those banks, you're going to start writing them down. You can print them off, whatever's easiest. And you're going to start writing down any bank that you've never heard of before, or they have community in the title. You're going to write that bank down and the phone number. And you're going to go through and just make a big list. Go page after page after page. Write down 25, 50 phone numbers if you have to. This is a numbers game, just like real estate is. When you want to buy a property, you don't make an offer on one property and buy the property, right? You're making a significantly low offer on that property. So your chances of that getting accepted is small. The same with banks. When you're looking for the right bank, you have to talk to a lot of banks to find out what is needed. Now, nobody's ever told you why that is until today. Through what we're going to be talking about in this Zoom call is why that is. So for now, you need a filtering system to get as many banks through the system as possible. And so as soon as you've got that list of all these banks, you're going to get all the list, get, like I said, 25 to 50 names, and then you're going to pick up the phone and start calling. What you're going to do is you're going to call, pick up the phone and just say, call the main line there. The receptionist is going to answer. Sometimes in the small credit unions or small banks, your loan officer may pick up, but you just introduce yourself and you just say, hey, I'm a real estate investor in the area, and I want to talk to somebody in the commercial lending department. Now, that's an important part of this. You want to talk to somebody in the commercial lending department. Now, in some cases, when you're talking to a smaller bank, their commercial lending and their residential lending department is the same people. And so they might tell you that right out of the gate. But what you're trying to do, this is when you say you want to talk to someone in the commercial lending department, they understand that you're a business. If you say residential, you're going to be talking to probably a different loan officer that thinks that you're going to want to get a loan on your personal house, which that isn't the case here. So you can just say, I'm trying to find so again, hey, this is Matt. I'm a real estate investor in the local area. I'm looking, I'd like to speak to a commercial lending officer. Is anybody available? That person will get on the phone, and you say, literally, when that person gets on the phone, you just reiterate what you just said. Hey, my name is Matt Larson. I'm looking, I want to talk to somebody in the commercial lending department. I want to ask you a few questions because I'm looking for, a specific type of loan. I want to ask you a few questions to see if you guys would be a good fit. That's a very powerful statement. Again, I want to ask you guys a few questions. I'm looking for a specific loan product, and I'm just trying to see if you guys would be a good fit. The reason why that's important is you are now qualifying the bank. Why? There's a mental shift there. Posture has changed. Most people go to a bank begging for money. That's never going to be you. You will lose the game of banking and getting loans if you go to a banker begging for money. You position yourself from a position of strength. You're calling the bank to see if they would be a good fit for you. Now, you can't see these people because you're on the phone, but there's a mental shift that happens through the phone to them. All of a sudden, wait a minute, this guy wants to see if I'm going to be a good fit for him. I better put on my sales hat and sell because I want this person as a customer. Totally different feel than if you call like most people do. Hey, I'm a real estate investor and I got in trouble and I need a loan. Can you help me? That's the average person does. So I'm trying to see, there's a specific loan product I'm looking for. I'm just calling you guys to see if you'd be there, you'd be a good fit. Now, if once you say that they're ready to go, you're going to ask them a few questions. Again, I'm going to burn through this. I'm only going to hit a few of these because we're going to go through the rest of this stuff at a later date. This isn't the stuff I want to focus on during this hour. During this hour, I'm trying to focus on how to get the banker to say yes. So one of the questions you're going to ask this banker is if they have any in-house loan products. The reason I like in-house loan products is because they're not sold to the secondary market like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You are not looking for a loan that will be backed by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. If you do, if you don't mention, if you don't, specifically, say that, what happens is if you have a loan with that's backed by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or sold to the secondary market, what happens is you have to fit in a tiny little box. There's no creativity in the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans. Okay, here's how to qualify. You either meet these criteria or you don't. You either pass or you fail. Okay, there's no creativity. So if they hold the loan in-house and it's a commercial loan, creativity is allowed, and they have a lot more guidelines that they can fit around. So once they say yes, you're talking to the right banker. So, and I'm not going to go through all these questions again, because you guys, I don't want to take all the time. What I'm trying to do is teach you how to posture yourself and how to find banks quickly. Okay. So again, I like if the banker says, hey, yes, we have in-house loans. Okay, great. Can you just explain to me what some of your in-house loan products are, for rental properties? And, you're building rapport. You want to find out what they're offering, of course, but you're trying to build a relationship. And by asking these questions, you're actually showing the banker that you're not a newbie. Even if you are a newbie and you're brand new, what's happening here is the banker is understanding what this person's asking me some sophisticated questions. He or she must be experienced. Bankers want to have the easiest job on the planet. They want to get people that are easy to qualify. They don't want to have to work really hard at loan committee and try to push through a loan that they know won't be passed. So again, they'll tell you about some of the in-house loan products. I'll usually ask something like, what are your seasoning requirements with your loans? Some people will say 6 months. Some people will say a year. Some people say we don't have seasoning requirements. You're going through and asking questions to find out if this is going to be a bank that's somebody you can work with. Now, what you're going to do is, once you've built a relationship and you've asked, I have a list of about 10 to 12 questions that we ask the banks. And once you find somebody that you like, you're going to write that name down, and that's going to go on a separate list that you're creating as somebody that potentially could work with what you're trying to do with loans. Now, never, ever, ever, ever write this down. Never give somebody your social security number during these phone calls and say, hey, hey, yeah, we have everything you need. And what's your social security number? Let's go ahead and get that done, and I'll go ahead and get you pre-approved. Absolutely not. Never do it. That question should never come up if you say, hey, I've got a few questions to ask you to see if there's a good fit. That question should not come up, but sometimes it still will. You say, whoa, wait a minute here. I have no interest in giving my social security number at this point. I don't even know if you guys are going to fit the criteria I'm looking for. I'm trying to make a decision. I'm talking to 30 banks today. I'm trying to make a decision who I want to work with. And all of a sudden you want to run my credit. That's just not how I do things. That's your response there. And by the way, if some of you guys aren't good on the phone, join the club. You know, when I first started calling banks, I was scared to death. First of all, I wasn't even used to being on the phone that much. And I'm calling banks. I have zero financials and probably a negative net worth or very small net worth. And I'm trying to figure all this stuff out. And so I was scared, you know, so just, you know, understand that that person doesn't know you. They're on the other side of the phone. You're gathering information. If you say the stuff that I teach you to say, you're going to be respected very, very quickly. So once you've built a relationship with a bank, and this is just the beginning phases. Now you've got a list. You've called, 30 banks, 40 banks, 50 banks, and you've got some people, on the side that you liked, and you've narrowed down your list. Your next call, you're going to wait a few days, and your next call is going to be back to the bankers that you liked. Okay. Make sure as you're talking to each bank, make sure you specifically write down the person you spoke to. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna wait a couple of days and you're gonna call back and talk to that banker. This is where we jump into appetite. The appetite of the bank is really important. So go back through. You're gonna call back a couple of days later and you're gonna find out what the bank's appetite is. But you're gonna ask in a specific way. Say, hey, we had a good conversation the other day. I mentioned I was going to talk to a few banks. I had a quick question for you. What is your bank's appetite, current appetite on lending? Do you have an appetite for rental, single family home rental properties? Are you looking more towards multifamily, bigger commercial deals? Are you looking for, business loans? Where's your appetite currently? Now, this is where you do your second phase of interviewing. And again, I like to wait a couple of days because first of all, my first 10 questions that I ask a bank the first time we call is so overwhelming that I don't want to overwhelm them any further than what we've already done. So I like, again, hey, what's currently, I always say something like, hey, I know every bank has their own specialty and they have their own appetite. What is your bank's appetite? What kind of loans are you looking for? That's another good line. What kind of loans are you looking for? And, again, some people will say, you know what, we just got burned on a big, one investor in town had 100 rental properties and they went bankrupt and that guy had 20 loans with us. And now we're kind of soured on the rental single family home. It was a mess to kind of fix and clean up. So we're really looking towards multifamily. This is how you're building a relationship, but you're finding out the appetite of the bank. Because here's why this is important, you guys. If you have a single family home that you want to get a loan on, and the banker just told you that they are soured on single family home rentals, the conversation is over, because as soon as that banker takes your loan to loan committee to get approved, it's going to get turned down. There's no sense in you wasting any more time. And again, the way that these loans work is you get, I'm going to back up a little bit and just do a quick little refresher course here. When you pick a bank and you get pre-qualified with a bank, that goes to an underwriter at that bank. The underwriter looks at your financials and either says, hey, this is good or bad or whatever, approved or not. Once you get approved on your personal financials, then the asset that you want to get a loan on has to be approved. Now that process goes through a loan committee. Okay, now based on the size of the loan, and every bank's different, one of the questions I always ask is, again, that's on another lesson that we'll get into when we have more time. But one of the questions is I always ask each banker is, what's the maximum amount that you can personally approve without going to loan committee? And so if that person says, $100,000 and you have a loan that you're trying to get on a house that's $200,000, then that has to go through loan committee. And again, loan committee is a group of, 6 to 10 people could be more in some cases, but it's a small group of people that look at your financials, look at the asset that you want to get a loan on, and then they approve as a group. They vote as a group whether or not that's getting approved. Again, most people don't realize this is how it works, but this is how it works. The loan officer that you're working with is a salesperson. I don't know if you guys realize that. That person is a salesperson. They're not approving your loan. They're taking it to loan committee, and loan committee is approving your loan. That salesperson has to sell you on, hey, you should, you should pick me as your banker. And then that loan officer has to sell the loan committee on, hey, I think this guy's a good person to lend to. So he's selling twice. He's a salesperson. Bankers are salespeople. Don't forget that part. So if you want to do a single family home and you just talk to your banker, hey, what do you guys have an appetite for right now? What kind of loans are you looking for? Well, we just got burned on single families. We don't want to do those. Then and you have a single family, just say, hey, it sounds like, I'm really looking for a single family home loan right now. And that's not something that you guys sounds like you're super excited about. Why don't I call you back when I get something multifamily? You mentioned that you guys are really looking for multifamily loans right now. Why don't I call you back when I get one of those deals? And that's how you easily transition out of the conversation. Now you still managed to preserve a relationship you've already started to build. You don't know if in a year you call that banker back and say, hey, I've got a multifamily deal that I'm looking for. And hey, by the way, what's the appetite of the bank right now? Oh, well, last time we talked, we told you that we weren't doing single family homes. Well, guess what? We cleaned up that mess and now we're doing single family homes again. It will always change. There's a pendulum swinging. Every bank has a pendulum, and they swing in and out of being interested in specific types of loans. Your job is to find out which one that they're swinging to. So I always ask, again, when I'm asking appetite, I'll say something about, are you looking for, single family? Are you looking for multifamily, commercial type loans, or are you looking for business loans? And see what they lend on. Okay. So once you find that out, that narrows your list. But build relationships. The next thing I usually ask when I'm in the same conversation that I have with the banker, when I talk appetite, I ask this question. Again, this is going to make you look very sophisticated. I literally ask, are you, would you say that you're, deposit heavy right now or loan heavy? Now, again, the reason you're asking that is if there's a couple reasons. Always give anybody what they want, right? If you want to achieve a certain end result, you have to give the person what they want. If you try to give somebody what they don't want, it never works out. So when you ask the question, are you deposit heavy or are you loan heavy? What you're asking the bank is, do you need money? Do you need cash? Or do you need loans? If a banker tells you that they're actually liquidity heavy or cash heavy, then that means they're looking for loans. So what you're doing here is you're stacking the odds in your favor. So if you just got off the phone, if you're in that same conversation, first of all, you've narrowed down the big list of all the banks you talk to down to from 50 banks down to 10 banks that you really liked. Now you're talking to those 10 banks, you find out their appetite, and you find out they're looking for single family homes, which is what you want to get a loan on. And then you ask them if they were loan heavy or deposit heavy, and they say they're deposit heavy. That means that they have to lend money. Okay, if a bank has too much on deposit, that means they don't have enough loans. That means when loan is on deposit, that is a liability to the bank. They are paying interest on that money. Now, I'm not saying it might be a lot. Doesn't matter how much it is. Interest rates are terrible right now. You'd be lucky to find a CD right now for 1%. I just signed a CD yesterday for 0.55% on some cash that I put in one of the banks. And so it's terrible. But a year ago it was 2%. So, it changes. But it doesn't matter. It's still a liability. If a bank has all this cash and they're paying out an interest rate on that money, that's still costing them money. Now, if they can lend out, if they're paying 0.5% on savings accounts, those are called deposits. If they're paying 0.5% on deposits, but can lend that money at 4%, there's a nice spread in there. That's how they make their money. So when you ask them if they're deposit heavy or loan heavy, and they say they're deposit heavy, that's another check mark in your favor because you want a loan. So just remember that. Okay, he said he likes single family homes and they have an appetite for that, and they're deposit heavy. I've just stacked the odds in my favor. This guy's probably going to end up getting my business. Now, that can change. They can be deposit heavy today and loan heavy in a year. Okay, it never stays the same. If a bank's doing a good job, then and they get deposit heavy, then they have to hurry up and lend out that money. Otherwise, they'll lose money. That a bank has overhead. People think banks are just these rich organizations that just have unlimited cash and they can just hit a button on a printing press and magically have more cash. That's not how it works. So we'll talk about the fractional reserve banking in a minute here. I'll get into that. So if they could be deposit heavy today and not be deposit heavy in a year. So what happens is if they're deposit heavy and they hurry up and cut rates and give investors, really good deals and interest rates, though that money will suck out of their accounts, and they could all of a sudden now they're loan heavy and they don't have enough deposits. So what do? They do a little deal. You drive by their bank on their little billboard out front. They're offering a deal on CDs. One way to find out if a bank is lending a lot on assets is if they're constantly trying to raise money through CD specials. You might think that when you see a sign that says CD special, 6-month special, 1.5% interest rate, you might think that that's just a way for the bank to make money. It's not. The bank's losing money on that CD because they're paying you for your money that's sitting there. If they don't relend that money to somebody else and they can relend it at a higher interest rate, they will lose money. So if you see a bank doing a special on a CD, what they're really telling you is they're trying to raise money so they can lend more out. So that might be a good potential person to talk to, unless they're super tight on funds and they just can't lend at the time. I've had this happen. Has happened to me where I went to close a loan and the bank didn't have enough money for the deal. And that was a bigger commercial deal. This is back in 2008, 9, and 10. So many people pulled their savings. When the market's crashing, people freaked out. They started pulling their money out of the bank, and the liquidity of the bank went down so much they couldn't fund my loan. It literally had to be delayed. That actually happens. So you never know, unless you ask. So again, question: are you deposit heavy or loan heavy? Now, if they say they're loan heavy, then that is there's a chance that there may not be really excited about doing a loan with you. Again, they're never going to say, hey, this is the situation we're in. They're just going to tell you didn't qualify. So you have to ask. So if they say they're loan heavy, be thinking about this. This is something to be thinking about. If you do have cash on the sidelines, if you have a CD, if you have just liquid savings, be ready to potentially move some of that money to them and arbitrage yourself. For example, now I know that a lot of people don't have, lots and lots of cash laying around when they're first getting into real estate. Other people have a ton of cash. It just depends on your situation. But when you find a bank that is loan heavy and they need deposits, or you drive by and you see they're doing a CD special, that's your chance to get creative. What some of the stuff I've done in the past, I've literally stopped at a bank that was doing CD specials and said, hey, I'm looking for a line of credit. You guys do line of credits? Yep, we do line of credits. Okay, great. Notice that you got a CD special out front. Yep, doing a special right now, Matt. We got 2%. Okay, well, what about this? What if I took $50,000 that I had sitting in a CD or just cash on the side. And I wanted to bring that to you guys to do a CD for me. That sound interesting to you? Yep, that's what we're looking for. We need loans right now. We need deposits right now. We're loan heavy. Okay, great. Well, here's what I want to do. I'll give you 50,000 on a CD in CD format. In a CD form. You give me 2%, but I want a line of credit against that 50,000 for 100,000. And they do it. And the reason why is, here's why. They're bringing money in the bank. Now, what can they do with 50 grand? They can loan that out on average. There's the fractional reserve system. We'll talk about that in a second. The fractional reserve system that the feds allowed them to lend on is 10%. So if you have 50,000 in deposit, you can lend 500 grand on that money. That's the fractional reserve system. So if you have 50, you bring them 50, and now they will give you a line of credit for 100. Are they still ahead of the game? Yeah, because they're lending 100 on 50 grand. They still have 400 more that they could lend against your money. They're still way ahead. Now that 400 grand they'll make interest on, and the line of credit they'll make interest on. So those are little tricks that you can do. And I use 50 grand as an example, but you can pick any amount. You could do $5,000. You could do $10,000. You could do $1,000. Build anything you can do to build a relationship. So that's just something to be thinking about when a bank needs CDs and stuff. The other thing too is there's all kinds of ways to get creative along those lines. So we'll dive into that a little bit more at a later date. So let's keep going here. But the main thing to remember is because most people, 99.9999% of the people do not have the information I'm giving you today. So they call a bank, they try to force a banker through a round peg through a square hole, and then they're frustrated and they say the bank is terrible and they just don't understand what they're doing and they don't know what they're doing. I hear this all the time, when the reality is they just aren't giving the banker what they want. So cool stuff. And we are burning through time here. So again, this stuff works best on non-conventional loans. You're looking to do this in commercial loans, okay? Conventional mortgages, any of the conventional mortgages or conventional lenders have to follow Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines, and they have a yes-no system. Either you fit what they want or no. There's not a loan committee for those loans. It's just either pass or fail. Okay. Once you get to that point and you've discovered, first of all, you've narrowed down all of the banks that, you went from 50 banks, calling 50 banks, you've narrowed that down to 10. Then you called those 10 and narrowed down whether they're, what their appetite is, if it fits what you're trying to do. And you've also found out if they're cash heavy with deposits or loan heavy. Now you've narrowed that 10 down to another 3 or 4. This is getting exciting. Now you've got the banks. Now, at this point, this is where you've gotten to the banks that you want to work with. Maybe you've narrowed it down to 3, and now you want to move forward to the next step. Now, you don't need to apply for all 3 banks. Okay, remember, one of the things that these banks are going to do is they are going to run your credit. Now, running your credit's not that big of a deal, but keep in mind, every time your credit gets run, your credit score will drop about 5 points. Now, that will drop 5 points, but it will recover 90 days later. It will start recovering from all that. But keep in mind that inquiry, so when your credit gets ran, that's called an inquiry. That inquiry stays on your credit report for 2 years before it drops off and goes away. What I've seen people do and make mistakes on is they call 20 banks in a day. They give them the social security number. They have them run their credit. They do it all wrong. And they hit, 20 banks hit their credit for 5 points a pop. And the next thing you know, their credit score is down 100 points. And now they don't qualify. There's no chance they're going to qualify. Although credit doesn't matter as much as most people think. especially if you do things the way I do, but you still want the best credit score you can get. And a 100-point drop would crush most credit scores. If you had a 750 credit score, now you've got a 650, you're kind of stuck. Okay. So if you've narrowed it to 3, you kind of need to pick the best one. Okay. Now, again, at this point, before you run your credit, they like the asset. So they like you. They like the asset class and they're ready to lend. Now you can have them run your credit and you give them your financials. They're going to ask for a personal financial statement. And that personal financial statement is very, very powerful. We went through that through the other lesson on how to build your whole personal financial statement and how it should be done. I gave you guys a ton of ammunition on for that, and my template that I use. You've got to turn in a pristine personal financial statement in order to be qualified and to get them to say yes. So you turn that in, you've got the asset, you've got your debt service coverage ratio, all of that stuff that we talked about before, all of that's dialed in, your PFS is pristine. Now they're going to ask for 3 years of tax returns. Okay, so have those ready. Have your Dropbox with 3 years of tax returns. When a banker says they need that, no problem, send them over. But like we discussed before, some people think that they don't, because they don't have a W-2 regular paycheck, they won't qualify. That's absolutely incorrect. A bank they don't care if you have a job. They care about what your income is, and a tax return proves income. So you don't have to have a job if you have income. If you're wholesaling houses, that's income. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's in job format or it's income. So make sure you have 3 years of tax returns handy. The other thing is you guys should have a bio. Bankers love bios. Okay, they want to know more about the person they're lending to. So have a bio created. If you're brand new, then talk about something in your bio that you're passionate about. Tell a story. Okay, your bio should tell a story. Like, hey, I grew up in such and such town, and I've always been in this industry. I got excited about real estate, and even though I'm new to real estate, I have a passion for real estate. Here's why. Here's what I'm good at. Here's what I like to do. Here's what my family's like. Blah 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 blah. Build a cool bio. You're talking about one paragraph here, not 3 pages. Okay, build a cool little 1 or 2 paragraph bio. Bankers want to get to know you, and they have to give that bio. That bio is going to go to the loan committee. And if you say, hey, I have 3 dogs and I love dogs, in part of your bio, and that loan committee sees that you love dogs and they love dogs too, psychologically, that's a click in the direction of getting approved. Trust me, bios work. So make sure you create a bio. And you want to sell off emotions too. If a banker, like I said before, if it's a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac loan, that's a yes, no, pass, fail. Okay, there's no logic put into that, or there's no emotion put into that. With you're dealing with a commercial loan, it's emotions. It's like I really like this guy, and I'm going to sell my butt off in loan committee to get this loan passed because I want to call Matt back and tell him he's approved. So make sure you're building a relationship. You're selling on emotion. You've built a friendship with this person. Ask them about them. Let them talk about them too. In your conversations with them, find out what they like to do. I can tell you right now, all the bankers that I work with, I know everything about them. I know what they do for hobbies. I was just talking. I had to renew. I renewed that CD yesterday. I was talking to my banker, and he loves old cars, and he's got some cool stuff he's working on for a little side business. I was talking about that. He wants to be an entrepreneur. Like I know what he likes. I know his favorite color even. That's the level of relationship I build with bankers. And guess what? When I need a loan, I get it. Okay. And there's times when I'm so over asset heavy, but I still get the loan because of that relationship. I have this weird tendency to go really, really fast. I buy a lot of houses, and that turns off a lot of bankers. They get scared for that. But if I can build that relationship, I can still get it approved. So I sell emotions with that. Again, they're going to run your credit. They're going to see your credit history. Very quick tip here. if you have something on your credit that is they're gonna see it. Okay, they're gonna pull your credit. And I see so many people, they do all this, put all this stuff together, and they've got this credit issue on their credit report, and they never bring it up. It's just the worst thing you can do. You don't have to have perfect credit to get approved. I helped a friend of mine, he had a a foreclosure on his credit, and I helped him get approved the loan by going through the same stuff we're going through here. And he's like, there's no way I'm going to get approved. I'm like, yes, you can do it. You just have to do these things. And so he couldn't believe it. Credit score does not matter as much as most people think. It only matters if that's the only tool that you give the banker. If you don't do everything else right, that's the only tool they have to go off. It's a lot harder to get approved if your credit's bad. So one thing I like to do, so imagine this. Imagine you're, I'm just trying to think of a cool analogy. So, imagine you're going to buy a property, and you're going to buy a property in an area that's super, super, like the city's really critical about the height of the grass. I'm just literally coming up with an analogy off the top of my head. And you buy it from this realtor, sells you this property, and you got to say, hey, I know this is a rental property and this is going to be an awesome property. But just remember, if you don't make sure that those tenants cut the grass, if the grass gets over 10 inches, the city's going to come by and fine you. Now, if the realtor tells you that, and 6 months down the road, you get a letter in the mail because you're with a warning that your grass is too high, you're not going to be upset that the city is going to fine you for your grass, because you know what? You got told that was the case. You're like, you know what? My realtor told me this could happen. I need to put something in place to make sure my tenants mow their grass on time. You were pre-framed to think that way. So if I tell you that analogy, because on your credit report, if you've got an issue on your credit report, you need to tell the banker the story, okay? Don't tell the banker you're an amazing guy or what gal and you should loan to me because I'm amazing, and then have a 600 credit score. You build the relationship. Always build the relationship first. They like you now. You've asked all these great questions. You've pre-framed them. You've got the odds in your favor. Now, when you go to say you run your credit at the end here, and you give them your social security number, and they're going to run your credit, you say, listen, I just want to bring something up. 2 years ago, I had an issue with so-and-so, and I made a mistake, and, I missed a payment on such and such loan. But here's what I've done to prevent that from ever happening again. Now they understand what happened. They understand the story, and they get your credit report, and they read it, and you know what? Matt said that was going to happen. He said that was on his credit report. That's no big deal. I can sell that to the loan committee. That, never hide something like that. Always use it as a strength. You've built a relationship, and you're even being transparent about your credit. No problem. They'll work through it. You built a relationship. You told them to expect it. Here's what you're doing to make sure it never happens again. Boom, easy. So always be very transparent on that, so you don't catch them by surprise. Remember, your banker's a salesperson. If you catch him by surprise and now he has to go into the loan committee and he's backpedaling because you got a 600 credit score and you missed a payment or didn't pay something or whatever happened, then you don't want him to be in that position. You want him to operate from a position of strength in loan committee. One quick note, there's a website, write this down. This is very, very powerful. This is how you get rid of stuff on your credit report. If you've got something on your credit report that shouldn't be there, you go to consumerfinance.gov. You could also find it by just typing in cfpb.gov. It's basically Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, cfpb.gov, and you can file a complaint. This is how you remove stuff from your credit report. You can file a complaint against whatever agency, bank, credit card company, whatever it is, because of that thing that's on your credit report. Maybe it wasn't your fault. Maybe it shouldn't be there. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe they did something they shouldn't have. And if you file that complaint and they don't respond within 30 days, it disappears from your credit report. It's gone. So make sure you don't always just pay something. If something pops up on your credit report that shouldn't be there, don't just pay it. Paying it late doesn't make it go away from your credit report. It's still going to be there. It's going to show up as a late payment, even though you paid it 6 months later or whatever it was. That's a mistake most people make. They pay something they discover on their credit report instead of having it removed. CFPB doesn't mess around. They don't play any games. They are on your side. They will remove stuff from a credit report if it's legit and needs to be removed. And if the company doesn't respond in time, then it gets removed automatically. So, okay, we're going like, we've just talked about a ton of stuff here. That's the main stuff that I want you guys to master and cover to get a banker to say yes. Now, I just literally talked for an hour straight. What question, does anybody have any questions for me? Does you have anything else you want me to dive deeper in? What do you guys got? You can hit unmute if you're all muted right now. You can hit unmute and ask a question if you have a question. Anybody have a question?
Matt,
Yeah.
so does the new program that you just put out about banking cover all of this?
100%. Yep. Everything. So it covers all of there's four total Zoom sessions. This is one of them. And Tara, we invited you. Somebody's dog's going crazy. So we invited you because you've just been a long time student. We wanted to give you a little taste of what is included in it. But we do 4 of these Zooms, and there's a full book I'm finishing up right now. I'm hoping to have that done next week, and it's super powerful on all this stuff as well. But all that's included. So yeah, yep, you got it. We don't leave anything for chance. This stuff is this banking stuff is not out there. I mean, it just doesn't exist. You can't find this anywhere. You can't YouTube it. You can't Google it. Like, this stuff that I'm teaching is just my own experience. This is not something somebody else taught. This is not something I learned in a book. This is me getting 2,000 plus loans, learning the ins and outs of how to get a banker to say yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else have any questions? Ryan, you got any questions? You all good?
I have a question for you, Matt.
Yeah, Rashad.
So I had a little bit of a challenging year last year. Didn't show a lot of income. A lot of stuff carried over to this year that we're selling, because mostly I do is flips.
Mm-hmm.
Would a banker not like that due to see like a low income on a P&L or a tax return?
Nope.
Even though I have a lot of stuff on my books for this year?
No, here's why. I get this question a lot. It's a really good question. Bankers are only interested in trends. Okay. Having a down year is very, very, very common. Okay. In 2015, I had $1 million stolen from me, and that rolled into a bad 2016. And I got a ton of loans in 2016 and 17. Tons and tons, borrowed millions and millions of dollars. And I just simply had a conversation with each bank that I worked with. I'm like, here's what happened. Had this money stolen. That's affected this. That put me in tight cash position. And so, I told the story, and they only worry if it says 3 years in a row. So if you had a down year in 2019, but you're already showing through P&L that your 2020 is up, no problem. Just be transparent and tell a story. Tell why.
That's great. Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Hey, Matt.
Yep.
Yeah, my question was very similar. Kind of that, I want to show a lot of income, but I also don't want to show a lot of.
Uh-oh, you muted yourself there, Ryan. Hang on. There you go. Say that again, Ryan. You cut out there.
Yeah, somebody called me like right when I was talking. So I don't want to like run my taxes and show like a bunch of income and then go back in and redo it, and I don't know if that would be unethical.
No, you don't want to do that. That wouldn't be very smart.
Yeah, I mean,
it's okay to have the conversation with bankers and explain the positioning. You could say something like this. I don't know your exact situation, but you could say something like, hey, in 2019, I had a big acquisition year. We bought a lot of properties and we didn't sell a lot. So my income isn't up there, but my assets are. And so 2020, we're starting to sell some of that off, but we're going to have a big 2021. So that's how I sold my down year in 2015 or 2016, basically. 2015, September 22nd, I had $1 million stolen, but that made my 2016 terrible. And I showed
kind of like if you show equity.
Yeah, so I showed a loss. my 2016 taxes was the first time ever in the history of me doing real estate I showed a loss on my tax return. And
Mhm.
so I just was transparent. Here's what happened. Had this money stolen that affected my cash reserves. Wasn't able to do this, but I'm doing this, this, and this. And in 2017, I actually had my best year ever. But I told bankers that in 2017, I'm going to have this amazing year. I'm going to sell all these properties. And then I lived up to it. And so
Yep.
just sell the future.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. My equity always looks amazing.
And so Ryan, here's a quick lesson for you then. When you're building a relationship with the banks, if you've got high net worth, that's equity, right? If you're strong net worth or strong equity, low cash reserves, low income, sell the net worth. So
Gotcha.
so what you would want to do is you would ask the bankers, one of the questions you would ask the bankers is, hey, out of curiosity, what's the bank like best here? Do they like net worth? Do they like cash flow? Do they like
Makes sense.
liquidity? Ask them and see what they say. And they say, oh man, we're really big on net worth here. We like, in case somebody gets in trouble, we like to know that they have some assets they could sell off and pull some cash in. Then you can say, oh, cool. That's kind of my situation. If they say, oh man, we really big on liquidity and income. We don't really care about net worth that much. Then you know how to frame that conversation.
One local bank didn't approve me for a credit line, and the reason was because my revenue went up almost 5 times from the previous year.
I had that happen to me once.
So they told me that it was like such a red flag to the underwriters that they wanted to see another year of that type of revenue. So,
yeah, I've actually had that happen as well. I got turned down. The first time I ever got turned down from a loan was like 2012 or 11, and they turned me down because my income went up too much in 1 year.
I was like, isn't that a good
Yeah.
problem?
No.
Like, but to an underwriter, it looked off. Like it looked like maybe there's
But trust me, of all the problems you could have with your financials, that's a really good one. You simply move on to a different bank.
Yep, gotcha. Okay. Hey, this is awesome information. This is incredible.
And Ryan, you missed the first part, so make sure you go back.
I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna watch them and like take notes and then have like a implementation plan because this will help. This stuff will help me tremendously.
Yep.
So
cool. Any other questions, anybody?
I got to follow up, Matt.
Yep, no problem.
So how would this, because I know you do a lot of rental stuff. How does this work? Because my business is strictly fix and flip.
Okay.
So do banks generally do like some kind of line of credit unsecured for fix and flip, or do they require that it's secured against the asset? Like, how does this kind of work in my realm?
Hang on. Can you guys still hear me?
I can.
Okay. I just had a message pop up that it was trying to sign me out. So if you guys lose me, make sure you say something here. But hey, to answer your question, what you want to do with those loans, I look for, there's two types of banks on these smaller banks. You can do a line of credit if you can get that, but a lot of banks won't do that for that reason. So what you want to do is you want to find 2 banks. Well, actually, if you're flipping it and selling it, you only need 1 bank. But what you have to ask is you have to ask if that bank has an appetite for short-term loans. Okay. So in your situation, you're buying it, fixing up, reselling it, and then the bank's only holding that paper for what, 3 to 6 months? Is most of your stuff sold within 6 months?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So here's how you do it. Here's how I do it. I do the exact same thing when I'm doing flips. I found a bank that had an appetite for short-term loans. How I sold it was I said, hey, I'm going to give you a 1%. There's 2 ways to do this 1%. I'm going to teach you both. You can either say, hey, do a 1% initiation fee. So when I sign the loan, you get 1%, because they're not making it. You have to think about the bank. They're going to do all this paperwork to get the loan through, and they're not going to make hardly any money because within 6 months you have it sold. So you can do a initiation fee, or you can do a 1% prepayment penalty. Hey, Mr. Banker, I know that these loans are a lot of work, and I value your time, and I know you're not collecting a ton of interest, especially right now, but I'll give you 1% as soon as we sign the loan up, I'll give you 1% if as a way to make the bank added income. And I have a couple banks over the years that absolutely thought that was the greatest thing ever. I'm giving them 1%. They're making money. They don't care that they're doing the paperwork, and they just file loan after loan after loan with me.
And you set that up on like an aggregated line of credit so that it could still be a 3-week kind of process?
Yeah. So you want to do that on a, what we call it a guidance line of credit is the term I like to use.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you go to the banker and you say, hey, once you've gone through the process I just explained, you go to the banker and say, hey, what I'm really looking for is a guidance line of credit. I'd like to start out with, $500,000 guidance line with you, and we can work it up from there. I know we need to get used to working with each other. And then just say on this guidance line, every time I do a loan, charge me 1% on the sale, or some people like being charged up front, whatever. It's either the initiation fee or prepayment penalty. You pick whatever the bank likes better. If you do the prepayment penalty, you're not paying it until, you sell. So it kind of just comes out of loan proceeds, right? So I want to offer that to you, and then we'll just revolve that $500,000 every time I sell a property. That money, if it goes from 500, maybe you do a property, it drops to 300. You sell a property, goes up to 500, and on and on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate
If
that.
you offer that to them at a time nobody's getting that, they'll do. Some banks will do it for you. Some banks will say, we just don't like doing the short-term loans. We like the asset being all stabilized and rented out and just sitting there collecting income. So you have to ask for that appetite. So one of the questions you could ask as you're building the relationship, just say, hey, you guys, do you prefer to just, do a stabilized asset, or would you, if you could make a little bit more money on the loan, would you do something that's a short-term flip? Here's my track record. Here's what I've done. Here's why I'm safe.
Is there a way to target those banks rather than kind of just shotgunning it and calling a bunch of them?
Yeah, you can. You can, one, network with people to find out who they're working with. And two, the cheat way to do it is when you hear about people that are, in your market, people that are always doing flips that are borrowing bank money. Do you ever hear about like those guys? Or if you see somebody that does a lot of flips, just track down all this stuff is public information. And a lot of times you can dive into the public records on the county courthouse website and find out here's what you do. You find out if they're getting mortgages, you find out who the bank is, and then you can usually dive into the paperwork deep enough to find out who their lender is. And then you call that lender, that exact banker. Now here's the only thing I can't tell you is every single county website in the country is different. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know in some counties this works really easy, and some counties are really hard to see. But if you do enough research, you can usually find out who the bank is. Worst case scenario, you can pull the old Freedom of Information Act. Okay. There's a form you can fill out that you can fill out that send to the county site, a Freedom of Information Act, and you could fill, and I've never done it for this specific reason, but I have done this a lot for my own research. But you could say, hey, I know so-and-so is borrowing, buying a lot of houses. I'd like to pull the public records on 123 Main Street that he bought. And you could pull the deed, and on the deed, and any of the mortgage documents that are going to be there, you're going to see the mortgage, and then you can find out who the loan officer was that signed the mortgage.
Super smart, man. Appreciate that.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions anybody has? We all good? Is that's not too much? That's too much fire hose or good stuff? Or the nice thing is, you guys, it only took me about 500 to 1,000 loans to figure all that stuff out. You get the shortcut version.
You are good.
All right. Well, hey, if there's no other questions, if you missed part of this video, I know it was just me and Tara at the very beginning there. Go back through and watch it again. Take more notes. This is really, really important stuff. Again, 2009, I had, a small portfolio. 4 years later, I had 450 houses utilizing the stuff that I'm teaching you right here. So take advantage of it. I'm going to go ahead and sign out, you guys. We're all good there. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Matt.
No problem. We'll see you.
Have a great
Thanks,
week,
Matt.
guys.
That was awesome.
Yep. Bye.